like qualified, incredible people too. If you're like going to spend your time being in a group, because I feel like I've tried to do Facebook groups and it's like, oh, I'll be on your podcast for fun because I have a hobby, and it's like, okay, like,
That's not what we're doing here.
I gotta make money, so
Yeah, completely agree with you. It's good having them in like the same sphere.
Mhm.
Okay. So let's get started. Can you just tell me a little bit about, like, introduce your business and you, and we could just talk a little bit about the group too.
Yeah, so I am the owner and founder of Christy Bowie Financial Solutions, which is my accounting and financial consulting firm. This comes from the basis of, well, rewind a little bit. So, my educational background, I'm a CPA, I have a master's degree in tax, and really had so much formal education around like the business and numbers side, which I think is a very unique background to have going
Yeah.
into owning a business. And I did that thing after school where you go work for the big name firms and, working with Fortune 500 companies. And I learned so much about how these people run a business and how they look at their financial statements and really use that to leverage, building wealth for themselves, and how the financial journey through a business goes. And so I did that for a few years. Was like, you know what? I really want to make a bigger difference in the lives of smaller business owners who maybe don't have the resources to get this education normally. I was working for these firms. It was like they would bill you like $1,000 an hour to talk to somebody. And so it was
Yeah.
really a goal of mine to make this information a lot more accessible. So I then worked at some smaller firms working with smaller companies. And one day I said, I'm ready to go out on my own. I'm ready to make this information accessible, make it relatable. I think that's another thing most people find is a struggle in the financial field. They're like, I talked to somebody and they used jargon. I had no idea what that was. And so really, I just decided to form my business to really make a difference in the lives. I work specifically with women in creative fields, especially, who I think are notoriously underserved in the financial segment. So really, really broad way of saying, that's how I got here. And I really just focus on providing financial, tax, and personal finance education.
That is awesome. So, I mean, that's a whole other little twist on what you usually see with a financial consultant. It's someone who focuses on bookkeeping alone or taxes
Mm-hmm.
alone. So you look at it from a holistic perspective.
Yeah. And I think the biggest thing, even just this week, I've been talking to people on sales calls and they always say, okay, well, I have my bookkeeper over here and my CPA over here, and I have my personal life over here, but like nobody really understands how they connect with each other. And one of the things we do, we just actually launched a new service that is really focused on that integration between business and personal, is having a service where, yes, we do your books. Yes, we do your books. Yes, we do your taxes, because you have to have the numbers to understand what is going on in your business. But we also say, okay, well, we made this much this month. How much can we afford to pull out? When we pull it out and take that money home, how do we spend it? What do we do with it? And so really that full picture where one person or one team has access and understanding to all of your information.
That is so freaking brilliant. The before picture that you just painted is me. I have a bookkeeper.
You're like over here and here and here.
Yeah,
You don't
I have
talk.
a
And
CPA.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's a disaster too. I love that you're looking at, because as you're typically working probably with solo entrepreneurs, small businesses, where your business finances are very deeply rooted in your personal
Mm-hmm.
finances. So why wouldn't you connect it?
Exactly. And not only is it deeply rooted there, sometimes it's emotional to be there, right?
Oh my
And
God, yeah.
and just having, if you are feeling emotional about your business, and that also comes into your personal life, and it just, there's so much there to unpack for somebody who is solely reliant on this source of income, but also maybe have some, financial stress.
Yeah. So this is probably a newbie question, but you're a CPA, does that mean that you have to work with people within certain states?
No, so actually, the cool thing about the CPA license is I believe the word is reciprocal. I think maybe
Mhm.
I'm using the wrong word.
No, I
But
think that's right. My husband works in education, and he
there
also
you
has a
go.
reciprocal license.
Yes. So the great thing about the CPA license is that we are licensed to work in any state. So I have clients, I'm based in Texas, so most of my clients are based in Texas. I am obviously most familiar with Texas law, but I have clients in California, New York, which are some really fun tax states. I have clients in Ohio, Florida. So I do have clients all over the place, which is really fun.
Okay, not asking for me, but I am asking for me. Today we're talking about like financial freedom and how to really integrate your business finances with your personal finances. Let me pull this up. For reverse engineering, which is exactly what I do with marketing, is like, how much money do you need to bring in? These are the packages that you need to have. And this is the target revenue for the companies that you should be targeting that would feel comfortable paying that. These are the things I think about. And we're going to be talking about it in a so much more fun way when it comes to your finances. So let's dig into that. How do you reverse engineer how much money you need to bring in to have the lifestyle you want?
Yeah, so I have a personal bone to pick with the online business industry because I think we are so focused on these like shiny numbers as our goal numbers, right? Like, how many times have you heard someone say, "Oh my gosh, I have a six-figure business," or "I make $10,000
All the
months"? Like,
time.
right? Like, we are basically fed like this is your goal, right? But who's to say that actually gives me the lifestyle I want to live? Who's to say that big shiny number that looks good on paper means anything for me? I may live in a really high cost of living city. I may have lots of debt to pay off, and that big shiny number may not be enough. Or I may
Yeah.
live in a really low cost of living city. I may not be solely reliant on this income, and I want to live a slower life. And pushing to that goal would actually make me miserable, right? So I just think that these generic big shiny numbers we're given are truly mean nothing. So
Yeah.
what you have to start by doing is sitting down and saying, okay, number one, from a financial standpoint, what financially do I need to live? And I work with my clients to create something we call a break even. Basically, what is everything we have to pay for in our lives and what does that add up to? So, number one, that's going to start with looking into your personal life and seeing how much you spend. And I know for some people, this is going to be like, oh my gosh, I don't even want to know which.
Uncomfortable, embarrassing.
This month we are moving. We're going on a European vacation. Like, literally has been the most expensive month of my life, and I am in the stage where I'm like, I don't even want to look at my credit cards. So I
Yeah.
could totally relate. But what you want to do is sit down and look at that. And I really like to look at finances over an annual period. So sit down and say, what is everything you're going to spend in an average year? Because we all know, like I just said, this is a really expensive month for me. I'm taking a vacation to Europe. I am moving, all of that. But that's not going to happen every month. So if I looked at this month, my numbers would be a little off. But on average, we do have a very repeatable cycle year to year. You may have 2 trips, or you may have, one big event, whatever that looks like. So sit down and look at what you spend in the average year. If
Mhm.
you, I like to use an app called Copilot to help me track that. There's also a lot. There's Mint. You could just look at bank statements, whatever that looks like for you. But really sit down and say, all right, in an average year, what is everything I have to pay for? And you could do it over a cocktail, over a cup of coffee,
You're
whatever. Have a
gonna
little
need a
money date.
cocktail.
Yeah. Have a little money date with yourself, right? Make it fun, make it exciting. Don't make this daunting, because I think sometimes when we put ourselves in that mindset, then it almost like manifests that way, right? If we decide it's going to be stressful, it is. So make it fun, make it a date, have a cocktail, and have fun with it. So sit down, look at everything you need in your life. And that is the first step of, okay, how much we spend personally. Then there's another layer to that, is how much, not just do we spend on a day-to-day basis, how much do we owe other people? So then we'll layer in things like debt payments. If student loans, if you have any of those, if you have a car payment, whatever, that maybe you didn't consider in that first step, we're going to
Mhm.
add in any loans that we have to pay to people. So those are really the first money going out the door. The next money going out the door that so many people forget to plan for is your taxes. So
Oof.
this is a very funny and circular equation to figure out, because it's like, well, the more we need to make, then the more we owe in taxes. But we'll kind of maybe just look at what you paid last year in taxes if you expect to make similar. And I don't mean, when I say pay in taxes, I don't mean what you paid in April, because that's just like the additional part. I mean throughout the whole year. Sometimes people get a little confused on that, but what you owed in taxes the whole year, right? So now we are at layer 3. Number 1 is what we spend day to day. Number 2 is what we owe people, what our debts are. Number 3 is taxes. Then number 4 is, do we have any wish list items or savings, right? How many of you can say you are financially at the point you want to be in your life? And if you were saying that, like, applause to you, but I'm that kind of person that always wants more. I'm like,
Same.
I'm going to add this wish list thing. I'm going to add this. So start with where we're at currently. And then, okay, I want to start saving in my retirement account. I want to start saving, I want to start my own 401k because I can do that as a business owner. So what we want to save, and then what our wish list items are. So I want to be able to spend $500 more a month because I want a new car, or whatever that looks like for you. So now we have layered on 5 components of basically, when I set it up, it looks like an Excel spreadsheet, and we're adding in all the numbers. Then at the bottom, you're going to have a really, really big number that's just going to be what it costs to live. And it's really just as simple as that, right? How much does it cost for us to live the life we want to?
Well, you make it sound so simple.
It's simple, but it's not easy.
No, that multiple cocktail sit down date with myself and my money would definitely not feel simple in the moment, but the way you think about it is simple. Like, duh, of course, just look at how much we spend. And
for some people, just to have it in a very organized format just feels a lot better, because how crazy is it when you're like, oh, I need to go look at how much I owe this person and when. Sometimes just having all those documents like in one place where you can easily find it. I can tell you, if someone asked me to like go dig through, 30 piles of my mail to go look up something, like that would automatically create stress for me, even if the money situation isn't stressful. So, just making it a little bit more organized for yourself also is going to contribute to alleviating some of that stress.
Yeah, that makes sense. Then you're going to this one spreadsheet that
Yep.
you have all the information that you need.
This is my entire life.
Yes, right here. So how do you figure out, now that you have this number, what's next? How do you figure out your business sitch?
Yeah. So the cool thing about that number is, if you're familiar with business financial statements, we have the revenue as the top line, and we have the gross profit is after our cost of goods sold, and then we'll have the net income at the very bottom. That net income is, in theory, distributable income to you, right? How much you could take home. So what we are doing is we are working backwards. If we know that bottom number has to be the number we got from our break even of what it's going to cost us to live, okay, how do we work backwards? So step number 1 is we are going to add back all of the expenses from our business. And when I say expenses, there are things that are fixed expenses and there are variable expenses. So I'm going to give you an example of this. A fixed expense is going to be something that is fixed. I was trying to think of a different word, the same month to month. So for example, I have a software subscription that's maybe $100 a month. It doesn't change based on how many clients I have. It doesn't change whenever the other factors change. It is just fixed every single month. So we're going to layer on every single one of those. Then we have to say, okay, once we have added all of that back and get to a number, we actually then have to divide by our gross profit margin. So it gets a little bit confusing when you're listening to me talk about it. But really what you have to understand is, okay, here's what I need. So we're going to use some hypothetical numbers to make it a little easier. Okay. I need to take home $5,000 at the end of the day. Then I have $1,000 in expenses. So what that means is we have to have a gross profit, or gross profit of $6,000 to get there. Now, what are all of the expenses that change month to month based on how much revenue we make. The most common one I see here is payment processing fees, right? So
Hmm.
we know if you bring in $6,000 in revenue, you're not taking home $6,000, even if you had no expenses, right? Because there are things like payment processing fees, things like maybe you have a contractor who helps you with that certain project, but it's
Hmm.
not fixed each month because it's only related to that project. So we actually look at those items as a percentage. So
Oh.
if we say that your payment processing fee, I know Stripe is like 2.9%. So we actually have to make more than that so that whenever we take out that 2.9%, we get 6,000. So you're going to divide by the cost of your variable expenses to actually determine what that revenue needs to be. And so I know it's a little bit confusing to hear it, especially if you're a visual person. So I'm just going to do a really basic walkthrough. So what your spreadsheet or, whatever you're looking at should look like is, here's what I want the bottom line to be. Then I'm going to add back all expenses. That's what I need the middle line or the gross profit to be. Then I'm going to subtract out the percentage of, or the divide by the percentage of costs I have. Then I'm going to get my revenue number. The cool thing is you can actually check if you've done this right, because you can also run it the opposite way. So say hypothetically we get, our number needs to be 6,200 to take home 5,000. So then I will run that through my profit and loss statement. I'm going to say if I start with $6,200 and Stripe takes out their processing fee, what happens after that? Okay, great. Then I have $1,000 of expenses. What happens after that? Did that get me the 5,000 I needed? Right? So we work backwards and then forwards again to see, is this what I actually needed? And what's so cool about this is really how you get that revenue number that is going to be a meaningful goal for you, instead of just that shiny number that the online business world has told you about.
Yeah, and it makes it a lot easier because then you know exactly how many, like, let's say you have retainer clients. You know exactly
Mm-hmm.
how many retainer clients you're going to need to
Yeah.
meet that number. So it gives you a really clear goal. This is what I need to close.
Yep. Exactly.
All right, I can get behind that. I keep losing track of where my questions are. Hold on. There it is. Ooh, okay. Let's talk about how to structure your business to achieve those goals. So,
Yeah.
Krista, edit out that awkward middle right there.
Perfect. Yeah. So just like you said, this process actually allows us to understand what we need in our business, which, just the knowledge is so much power to say, if this is what I need in my revenue goal, how many retainer clients do I need? And how long is it going to take me to serve those retainer clients? Okay, great. Do I have that many hours in a week, right? Sometimes it'll come out to, at my current pricing, I would have to serve like 500 clients to make that amount of money. That doesn't work, right? It just, no amount of math is going to make pricing and number of clients that don't add up. So we will look at that number of revenue and say, okay, here's exactly what I need to make in revenue. Here's how many clients I have to serve. If that's not doable, okay, go back and look at my pricing. Do I need to change my pricing? Or do I need to somehow decrease the level of service because what I had to do was 500 hours a week in order to fulfill this, right? How do you create your packages around this? And that's something that I am a huge fan of, is, creating packages so that you have very distinct processes. You learn to know exactly how much time this will make me, exactly what my profit margin is from this. And then I can be really predictable about how many clients I need to bring in order to actually reach that goal.
That is brilliant. And I'm just going to tag on a tip that I have been doing for the 3 years I've had Tiny Marketing is I time everything. Every project
Mm-hmm.
I do, I time each task so I can really budget that to perfection. I know exactly how long it will take. And oftentimes when I'm creating, for example, I have been doing messaging and content strategy for my clients for years. And it has evolved over time where I'm like, well, they also need to know like what events they can speak at and a strategy to be able to capture that audience and all of that. So it's evolved. So, but I have been tracking my time so I know exactly how long it is and I can repackage it and reprice it, knowing that and knowing what number I need to make in order for it to be worthwhile.
Exactly. I don't know if you use Clockify. I'm a big Clockify girl. You can put like, I have different clients and then actually different subtasks of each client. So I know like, oh, I didn't budget this portion of this client's project right. And I also have a reminder in my project management system I have clients generally on a 6 to 12 month contract. Um, at their renewal time to reevaluate their pricing, because if I don't tell myself to do that, I forget or I just won't
So
do it.
reevaluate their pricing or your pricing.
Well, reevaluate my pricing for that client.
Yeah. That's a good idea because a lot of like my clients have they stick around for years
Yep.
and my pricing is still the same as it was
Exactly.
years
And
ago.
sometimes you just have to tell yourself to do that, right? We all know it. But if it's not actually like put into your project management system, like for me, I'm a very, list checker. So if
I
you
am
put it on
too.
my list, I'm going to be like, okay, well, I have to do it now. Here's the deadline. So I got to do it. So it's just really
Yeah.
the action of putting it on your to-do list to say, I need to sit down and see how much I actually profited on this client. Did I budget their project properly?
That's really, really smart. So you talked about your app. I use Teamwork. It
Okay.
is a project management tool, but it also has all of your time tracking in there.
Ooh, love
So,
it.
yes, it's great, and you can do it by task and subtask, but all of my contractors are also in there, so then I could
Hmm.
just take their time and move it over to Gusto, which is my payroll app.
Big gusto girl as well.
Yeah, my CPA turned me on to Gusto. I'm like, "This is so easy. I can't believe I wasn't doing this before."
Yep, literally the best.
Yeah, I was a mess before. I was paying people through Zelle, Upwork, PayPal. It was all over the place, however they
Yeah.
wanted, and now it's all through Gusto.
And I can only imagine that was so hard to keep up with. And you get to a
Yeah.
place where you're just like, money is flying out the door. I don't know who I'm paying when. I don't know what's going where. And that makes it really, really hard to understand your actual financial numbers.
Yes, it was chaos, and if you know anything about me, I hate that. I'm such a systems person too. Like, I need structure.
Yes, yes. And structure tends to be really hard to do when you let other people kind of govern your
Mm,
processes. And one of the things that I'm huge on with my clients as well is like there are very much financial systems to put in place. So for example, Gusto, just having a certain designated payday that you can know, hey, today's the day I'm going into my payroll, I'm going to pay this. It's so structured and predictable. And something that I found to be really interesting about financial mindsets is the more we can systemize it, the less we expose ourselves to the emotional side of human error.
yeah, yeah, there is so much emotion tied to money because it's tied to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If I don't have this money, I'm not meeting my like security net, the things
Right.
that will mean that I'm okay in life. So yeah, it's an emotional topic.
Right, exactly. And the more that we allow ourselves to be emotional about it, unfortunately, humans aren't like wired to make the best financial decisions. We are wired, well, for instant gratification, right? Which isn't always the best financial decision. And so, the more that we can systemize that to reduce the emotion component of it, the better off. That's why I really love a lot of people aren't big spreadsheet people, but that's why I love, even if you're not a spreadsheet person, put all of this information in a spreadsheet because like there's no fighting the numbers. You look at the numbers and you're like, okay, I can't put emotion behind, oh, well, I really feel like my profit margin is that like You can't fight that,
Yeah.
right?
There's no
And so
feelings in math.
there's no feelings. And so the more that you can actually see concrete numbers, the less that's going to expose you to making emotional decisions.
Yeah. So do you have any advice around stopping yourself from making those emotional decisions?
Yeah, so I would say when you are in a good place, have another money date with yourself. When you are feeling in a good place and not stressed about money, write some rules and principles for yourselves. So, principles are kind of like the idea you have around money and like what your broad principles. So, maybe, I believe that I should give back a certain amount of my money to charity, or I believe, whatever that looks like for you. And if you do have a significant other, I would really invite you to bring them in on this too, because I think it's important that we share these with, just the people in our lives. The second thing is rules. And so these rules are going to be following the principles because I believe this is what I'm going to do in XYZ situation. So for me, an example, if I want to make a purchase over a certain price, I'm going to wait 24 hours before doing it. Okay, great. That's my rule. If I see something I want that is that much, I don't get to make that emotional decision. I have already made a rule for myself. But if in 24 hours I still want it, great. I know I'm not making an emotional decision. Another rule is if I get like a bonus or something, an unexpected amount of money, I'm going to save X percent of it, right? So now when I get extra money, there's no me saying, oh my gosh, like I really feel like I need this new handbag. It's okay. Look at the rule that I set for myself.
Yeah.
I'm going to set aside this much to savings, but I'm also going to allow myself to spend this much. And so by setting these rules for yourself when you are in a good place and not feeling emotional about it, you give yourself the structure of exactly what to do in certain situations so that you're right. There's no questioning exactly how you're going to act to it.
That's smart. That's smart. And then you're only disappointing yourself when you don't follow your own rules.
Right.
Now, you talked about your spouse. What do you do if you have two different mindsets, like money mindsets? One's a spender, one's a saver.
Yeah. So I think it really depends on what works for you. So, personally, my husband and I really just kind of combine our stuff. And if somebody is not doing well, we sit down and have a conversation. But that's also our personalities. And I think we are very geared towards the same, we have the same long term goals. But I would say, just like you had a money date with yourself, have a money date with your spouse, sit down and set those expectations of, here are my financial goals. I want to save X amount. I want to do X amount. And making sure that they are on the same page about that, because, we all know that if somebody is making a significant amount of money or somebody is spending a significant amount of money, it's just, my biggest thing is just get on the same page, right?
Yeah.
There's never going to be a perfect result because we know that is a very, what is it? There's a lot of tension behind that in significant others, but making sure that you guys are on the same page about what your goals are and what steps you're going to take to get to your goals. And then throughout the year or throughout whatever time period you have set for yourself, sit down to evaluate, are you making progress towards those steps? So if you say, one of the really common ones I see is, I want to save for a down payment on a house. Great. What steps are we going to do to get there? Okay, I'm going to contribute X amount into this account every single month. Perfect. Now we can't set it and forget it. We have to check in and say, is this actually happening in a few months? If it's not, why not? What can we do to fix it? If it is, great. Can we accelerate our path? Can we change some things? So making sure that you guys are on the same page about the goals, about the process to get there, and then checking in over time.
Well, brilliant tips. Thank you. Thank you for joining me today. I am so excited to bring on this topic. I think it's going to resonate with so many people who listen to this show. I was looking at the stats and I think like 50% are business owners.
Yeah.
So this is going to be a topic that they really care about. And they're probably tired of hearing about marketing from me.
Money is always so important as a business owner, and just to really understand everything that's going on.
Yeah. And that just spins my brain wheels and makes me want to talk more about packaging and how to make sure that you're getting those revenue numbers that you really need. So, is there anything that you wanted to talk about that we didn't get a chance to yet?
I mean, I feel like we covered so much without, diving into a whole separate topic. But, I would just say the one thing that I've probably emphasized a lot throughout the episode is make this a fun and not intimidating process for yourself. The more that you set yourself up with saying things to yourself like, I'm just bad with money, I can't manage it, I don't understand, this is going to be miserable. It's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? So whatever your attitude is towards your finances, if that's a negative, find a way to flip that for yourself and make it at least tolerable so that you will have that self-fulfilling prophecy of like, all right, I am capable of handling it, I am good with my money, and you kind of have those beliefs that are going to steer you towards that.
I can do hard things.
Exactly.
And how can people find you and work with you?
Yeah, so I am on social media, mostly Instagram and LinkedIn. My Instagram is at it's Christy Bowie, and then my LinkedIn is Christy Bowie CPA, so you can find me there. I do